So I had like a pre-recorded thing, and then I recorded something in Porcfest. Um, yeah, I recorded, and my microphone died, and it was in the bumps bus that she had, or as I called it, the bang bus. He got set up for podcasting, but it was like hot as shit in there. There's no criticism to like bumps, by the way. Thanks for providing that service. But yeah, there's nothing there. There's no specific internet, so I just had to like record it and like, you know, roughing it, trying our best.
Torpy, torpy.
Oh yeah, so for everyone listening, we're just
Oh,
rambling about the El Salvador thing while we're waiting for everything to kick in.
okay, now we're
Um,
live.
and Hilawi says, who's on the podcast, he says, Chris, Bang Bus was bumping. It's funny. Yeah, like why call it like whatever when
I
you can
mean,
just call
that's.
it the Bang Bus?
I mean, isn't that like the name of like some porn company
I
or
think
something?
so. There must be. He is someone in the Odyssey like live chat thing. Let me know if it's actually working on Odyssey right now. I know it's on YouTube with 4 people. Thank you, 4 people. It's funny. Yeah. Oh, it appears to be working. All right, great stuff. He'll always says working on Odyssey. All right. Well, hey everyone. Welcome to another edition of Friday. I can't believe it's Friday already. I thought it was Monday like yesterday. But we got a good show for you guys. A lot of rambling ahead of us. So let me just hit this intro thing and I'll say the usual stuff and then we get into it. I might have to start using that until people get angry with me. But
Oh, is that what's his name? I know exactly who you're talking
J.
about.
Kenji Lopez alt.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's
That's
him.
it. I'm having like a brain fart, but yeah, I know exactly who you're talking
Yeah.
about. I watched one too.
So hey everyone, or as another great first live one in like 3 or so weeks, which is sad because I was traveling. I tried to do it live and everything crapped out on me, and then last week I tried to do it live from Porkfest and I did record live for Porkfest, but I had to upload it later. So what you gonna do? Cry? Probably. Just in the YouTube description, so you can do that. But in the Odyssey description, I also have a link to the YouTube channel for in case it craps out and I can't do anything. So in that case, just use whichever one works. If you're on Odysee, you can leave a hyper chat. You ask a question or whatever. Send me some credits, and I will Cointree chat, cointr.ee/the desert lakes. Leave a little message with a donation, and it'll pop up down there in the bottom. And then yeah, I'll answer that too. And that's what you do for a lot of pressing questions. So I hate to do it this way, but I will anyway, because the crappy ones, and then just work back to the rants because the rants eat up a lot of time. We'll just end with the rants, so you can just be all right. We got to stop there. Bye. You don't want to like miss that out. So, um, first off, did you see this study here that crypto ownership has nothing to do with distrust in fiat? A BIS study.
I have not, but I mean that does.
Kind of funny that people. First off, Bank of International Settlements. I don't like. Obviously, a bank telling people, you know, saying, "Oh, what are people getting out of the banking system for?" Again, allegedly. Uh, of course, I would not trust that to be entirely accurate, or there'd be some issues. But at the same time, how many people are in it for number go up to begin with? I wonder how it would have been different if it was done. Let's say, what is the year? Like 5 years ago. Like if you start talking about crypto people in like 2015, 2016, I wonder if a lot more of them would be like asking about just trying to get out of fiat and not a purely speculative investment.
Yeah, I mean that's. I think you're right. The number would have been a lot higher. I mean, the narrative was so much different back then. We were trying to build a new money, like almost sort of like an alternative banking system. And, part of the whole narrative change really happened, around that whole block size debate, right? Because they were literally the side that won the debate was committed to making Bitcoin unusable for all the things we wanted to use it for, and it became okay, well, what can you do with it now? And it's like, well, you can hodl it and wait for the price to go up. So I mean, it like that's like the only thing it's good for now.
Mm.
So there was a massive, different narrative back then than we have, and there was that huge narrative shift. All was around.
That's pretty crazy in retrospect to see just how like and the funny thing is I still see run-ins with like OG Bitcoiners, whether they moved on to another project or like Bitcoin Cash, for example, or whether they're still in Bitcoin but are still committed to their same principles. Um, there's a couple of people, like for example, the Samurai Wallet people are interesting, and they're still committed to BTC only, and they have this weird thing that they do. So for this is like the technical boring thing that hopefully I don't lose everyone watching right now, but with coin join transactions, right? You and what happens with coin join with any Bitcoin or Bitcoin based transaction, you get change back from that, right? You get a change address, and then the problem with that is whatever. So like let's say you spend this much, and then whatever is it's been, of course, the way Dash handles it with the Dash's coin join thing is they just spend all change as minor fee, as toxic change and like a toxic change address or something like that. And so they basically don't touch it because otherwise it can de-anonymize you. But long story short, with all that stuff, they basically added some atomic swap feature in the wallet where you can swap your toxic change out for. But
Yeah,
basically, they did this
and
thing. Yeah, go ahead.
we fixed that in Bitcoin Cash too,
Yeah.
with the cash with the change, and it's another innovation coming from outside the Bitcoin community, I guess.
Yeah, I know it's funny. The the maxis are freaking out to the point where I think it's Giancomo Zucco or whatever the hell that guy. Again, I just see these names
Mhm.
pass by on Twitter and I just hear that they're assholes. He's been telling everyone that Samurai Wallet's been compromised by it for them, like they've been compromised, and so um, it's it's pretty funny because yeah, uh, it just they say well we're not actually touching it, we're letting people swap it out. The Monero people have to handle their own thing, but then it comes back and it's just like it's funny because if you're an OG, if you're actually trying to do the mission, eventually you're gonna have to touch cross chain type stuff or something, right? You don't have
Mhm.
to, but it becomes more efficient if you're honest about what you're trying to do. And then the maxis don't care as long as they attack their own. And similarly, Max Hillebrand, shout out, hi Max, of the Wasabi wallet, who's a big Lightning guy, loves Lightning. He's also a principled dude who I hear he's unbanked off crypto as well, which I don't. That's got to be really difficult with BTC, but that's a different subject. Uh, he's been all upset over the Salvadoran situation because of it's basically government mandated Bitcoin acceptance and airdrops, and he's like, this is not what we signed up for, and everyone's like, yeah, well, whatever, numbers going up, and they're all tearing into him, like, Bitcoin on Bitcoiner on Bitcoiner violence.
Yeah, we've got like a cozy relationship between payment processors and the government, and it does seem like there might be some cronyism.
Now, I'll talk about the trust thing later. Let's just dive right into the Maxi thing. So, the Salvadoran thing, um, there's some video that surfaced, and this is like me on like 0% research. So don't be like, oh, he's a known scammer journalist person who like talks shit. And I'm admitting my level of information on the thing. There's been a video circling all over Twitter that has a Vice watermark in it. So I assume it comes from Vice, right? And there's a gentleman allegedly in El Salvador who's trying to pay from buy some little like food cart thingy, buy something from them. They have a big Bitcoin accepted here sticker on the front. And he's like, "Oh, I got it's been set up by the Salvadoran government. They've guaranteed it through Strike." And so he says, "I got this. You can do strike to strike payments." To bring like the Family Guy thing into it, but like no, no, you just can't do it
Yeah.
because she's been trying to get in contact with Strike. Like there's some like I sent him an email because it didn't work or they didn't answer my email or something, which is like, let's be honest, a very normal customer service kind of a thing. You're a fledgling company and a whole country of non-English speakers, because Strike, as far as I know, is an America-based country, America-based company, or English user, and a whole country is going to be like emailing you, hey, how do I get signed up? Of course, it's going to be customer service nightmare, and that's not the criticism here. The thing that's funny is they're like, oh, everyone's going to take it, it's great, and then they all guarantee through one company, which I'm sure is making a lot of money off of this, and then people can't really pay because it's all on a centralized solution. Like telling people to use Strike, to pay with Strike, and it's just like now you literally just tried to bank everyone when 70% were unbanked. But yeah.
Well, I mean, this goes into, I mean, in 2014 that like if they have their way, Bitcoin will become custodial. There's just you can't transact on chain. That the only other solution is it's going to be custodial accounts, right? And at that point, like Bitcoin loses a lot of what's interesting about it. And I think that in order to make Bitcoin work today, I think people are realizing, look, it has to be custodial. We have to do it custodial. For example, if two customers have Strike and you have Strike on their servers, right? It doesn't need an on-chain payment. It's very fast like that. And then what you need is some sort of like clearing system. So like different custodial wallets or wallet providers can have like off-chain transactions, because today they're using like the blockchain for clearing. Like if you have Strike and I have Coinbase and you want to send me a payment, they're probably going to use the Lightning Network for that, right? And it doesn't even necessarily need like the Lightning part of the Lightning Network. Like simple bi-directional channels set up between Coinbase and Strike would do the trick, right? Like that's not even necessarily like Lightning across multiple channels in order to route them. But if you just have like a bi-directional channel set up between Coinbase and Strike, then someone who has a Coinbase account can pay someone who has a Strike account, and they can just settle up using their channel that they have open with each other, right?
Yeah.
Coinbase and Strike can settle up. And I think that's probably what you're going to see, bi-directional channels as a settlement system for custodial wallets. That's far different from what we were sold as a bill of goods in 2014, when we were told we were going to have this like non-custodial consumer payment layer where we were going to be able to send instant payments between everyone. And that's just not how it's working out and playing out in practice. And we could have predicted this easily back in the day.
Yeah. Lightning is, as much as like I talk smack here or there about it, it's something that I am committed to continue using and like be along for the ride as long as the ride goes, because Bitcoin is the number one network right now by a lot of metrics, not all of them, right? There's possibly a lot more value floating around Ethereum. There's a lot more there's a lot more transactions on other networks. I think there's a lot more actual users on Library than Bitcoin as far as day-to-day exposure to the blockchain and technology itself. But because as long as Bitcoin's like number one in any kind of way, the only way that people are saying it's going to be used efficiently is Lightning. And so I kind of like have to be at the forefront of that until it's just kind of like, what are you going to be arguing against swipey cards while people are using tap and pay? Like you should have I don't have a kernel. I'm like, how do here, you take it, you deal with it. But anyway, it's like knowing about the legacy payment technologies that are most modern. And the thing about Lightning is, and the problem is, it gets much more complicated the more channels are involved, the more hops that are involved. Everything gets more complicated, especially when you start balancing liquidity, which is the real stickler. It's so obviously the most efficient thing is if everyone has a Lightning. This is just like, I kind of forgot all that because I'm like, I want to learn how it actually works, and I learned how it actually works. So this is my node; it's running right now, and I'm like, and I'm starting to think about like, oh well, it's all best if you connect to the same big node, and the big node can hop to the other big node or two or three.
Well, I don't even necessarily think that works either, because like, let's say you and I both connect to a big node and we deposit money in the channel. I still can't send you money, right? Because you've got, like, if you think of the way the channels work, I've got
Yeah,
Okay.
unless
So
they pledge money to you. Unless, yeah.
unless they put up their own money in the channel when you opened it, which they don't frankly have a lot of incentive to do. And it would cost a fortune if like a big hub wanted to do that. I mean, we're talking hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. Maybe if you start making some payments and you push some of your value to the hub, then maybe they can push it back to you when I try and send you a payment. But you can, right off the bat, you can see why payments are not going to go through 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, I wrote this. I feel
That they
like,
were talking about Lightning in 2013.
yeah, I feel like I was like a voice in the wilderness. And the only other person who like came to my defense on that article was Mike Hearn, if you remember that name.
Oh, yeah.
Um, you know, I really like Mike. I wish he didn't leave. But the days, I think a lot of people were just sort of like feeling it out and kind of like taking a wait and see approach. But like, I mean, it was obvious to me that the payment success rate was not going to be 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And how you have to ask, like, how viable of a consumer. Imagine that PayPal failed even just like 5% of the time. 5% of the time you tried to use PayPal, it spit back an error and said, you can't pay that person.
It's
PayPal would
terrible.
not exist today, right? It would be defunct as a company if that get it down to that. But that's like the best that they could possibly hope for. And it's just like you can't have a consumer application that does that. I don't know if you saw the numbers I posted recently, but let me pull this up real quick.
I'm getting out the numbers now.
Search my own tweets. The Lightning Network graph, which has basically deposited in the channel when it was opened, right? So this is just garnered from like, well, I mean, it's broadcast around to I think it's broadcast around to everyone on the Lightning Network, and it's on the blockchain, right? But what you don't see is kind of how that, they call that capacity, how that capacity is currently distributed,
Yeah.
right? So if I open the channel with you and put in 1 Bitcoin, we don't know if I have the 1 Bitcoin, you have the 1 Bitcoin, or if it's split somehow between us, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I did was I wrote code where I said, let's say I want to send a certain amount of money. I'm going to pick a random user on the network that has a certain amount of capacity in their channel. And I want to send that capacity to, or can find a route from this random user to another random user. Okay. This is simulating like a real world payment, right? One random person trying to send the payment to another random person. And because I don't know how the capacity is distributed across these channels, I'm assuming the best case scenario where every channel has the capacity distributed exactly how I need it to route the payment, right? That's a completely unrealistic assumption. It's not going to happen like that. It's not going to work out like that in the real world. And so the actual routing failure rate is going to be worse than my numbers suggest. Like my numbers are overly optimistic because of the way I did this. But basically what I came up with was for $1, there's it fails 4% of the time. For $10, it fails 13% of the time. For $100, it fails 53% of the time. And for $1,000, it fails 84% of the time. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's given the current topology of the Lightning Network. Now you tell me, is that a viable consumer payments app?
Today, absolutely not.
Yeah. So like, I mean, is it when you pay with fiat, you go out on a date with a girl and you spend $100 on dinner? Do you like, is it like a 50% chance you're going to end up washing dishes, when you try to pay with fiat? Like, no, but that's how it would be if like everyone was using the Lightning Network. And like nothing is fundamentally going to change that design of the system where every payment needs to not just find a path through the network, like a 6 degrees of separation type, connection between one user and another, but every hop along that channel needs to have like near 100% success rate in that type of topology. Like I was telling you in 2013, it's not going to happen, right? And here we are in 2021, and you see the numbers: $100, 53% failure rate, right?
Yeah.
So like this was known. See, this is another thing that like I don't. I mean, I almost like. Let me back up. When we have technology like Bitcoin, there's a big information asymmetry there, right?
Yeah, of
You have
course.
technical people understand how it works. They understand what's going on under the hood. They understand the trade-offs and the positives and negatives of the system. And then everyone else doesn't really have that understanding because they're not technical. They're not capable of following, how this stuff works. So they have to rely on technical people to tell them how good the technology is, how it works, what it does, what are the trade-offs. And in 2013, 2014, 2015, and even down to today, the technical people lied, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I was just to be completely blunt, they radically oversold the Lightning Network intentionally to win the block size debate, right? That they had a vested interest in winning the block size debate. And this included doing things like censoring people, not allowing dissenting opinion in the forums, not allowing people like me to speak my mind,
Yeah.
deleting comments, banning users, right? They had a vested ability of it as a overall consumer payment system. And then a lot of other people who rely on technical people to tell them how stuff works took that false information and then blew it up and amplified it and spread it like crazy. This is why you have, people like Peter.
Thing. So it's very, very minor. If you're listening to this on the audio only version right now, on Anchor and all the other stuff, you can use the Breeze podcast wallet to stream Lightning Satoshis to me, to this node right here. And you cannot do that with Peter McCormack because his podcast, What Bitcoin Didn't Do, or whatever it's called, is not set up because
Yeah, so I mean, these people in like the technical people in Bitcoin are very smart. They're very high IQ. I refuse to believe that like they just didn't know that the system was going to have these problems. They knew that. They knew that from the beginning, and they didn't care because who are not technical and who weren't capable of formulating their own opinions on it, because they needed to rely on the technical people to tell them what to think. They ended up thinking like, hey, we have this great technology that's going to solve the payment issue in Bitcoin. And like it's just, it really got to the point where now it's like, I mean, you see what's going on. Like now they're doing a bait and switch and selling people custodial solutions as like a Lightning
yeah, there's a lot of information asymmetry going on here. It's not just it. Obviously, that's a great simple classification of the situation. There, to make it slightly more complicated, but still simple, is you have non-technical people who are into selling this, who just like the pomps of the world, right? Those kinds of people who just want to like sell it, and they don't know what's going on. Then you have technical people, a lot of who are working on Lightning are probably pretty honest. A few of them are not, right? A few of them are not. And then there's a third class, which is the business people, because there's a lot of people who like understand how Lightning works, but don't get it, as far as they don't get that, like they're building Lightning, right? They understand how it works. They just don't understand how the implications of onboarding 100,000 people and all the on-chain transactions, and then the customer, but the routing thing, we'll just figure out the thing and reroute this and expand. But they don't understand like what company is going to have this much money to just put in liquidity. So there's three different kinds of groups, right? And so they're not all communicating with each other. And then the shills, the pomps of the world, are basically finding a narrative that fits them, and then they're going to the other two groups of people, most of whom are or some of whom on the business side, probably most of whom on the tech side are honest, not all of whom are, and they're asking them things, and they're getting an answer that fits them, and they're kind of patchworking together a narrative as it goes along. Like, for example, they just say, Lightning works, it's ready today, and then they're like, then it's like, well, it doesn't because these issues. Well, I use this wallet and it works just fine, and it's like, yeah, but that's custodial. And then they're like, oh. And then they go back to their person and they say like, well, Phoenix wallet is non-custodial, but it still works like that. And it's just like, yeah, but the way it like connects to the node and stuff, even though it's technically non-custodial, it's still heavily reliant on like the hub and spoke model. Well, you're just a scammer. It's like they just take these things, so your answer is going to be full of like a bunch of truths that altogether kind of make up a lie.
Yeah. I mean, and like some of these people I like them. Like I know roast beef. I know him. I've met him on a number of occasions, and he's a really cool dude. He works on Lightning. So I mean, I don't think like I've never heard like.
Let's pause this for this comment here, this super chat, right? Hi to both you and Big Dick Pacia. I don't know if that clears up who sent it or not, but since this one is already about Bitcoin Cash, what do you think about Smart BCH? I'll have to have you answer that in just a second. Why don't you finish your train of thought, and then we'll go to Smart BCH.
No, I was just gonna say, like I know people who work on Lightning, and I mean, generally speaking, like the people that I like who work on it are not the ones out there overselling it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like I'm a little bit wanting to understand what they like so much about it. It's like I don't really um see things from their perspective. Like I mean, it's definitely interesting, and it's definitely a technical challenge. Like I will say, like writing that code base, designing the protocol, making that work, even just to make it work to the level that it's working today, was a monumental technical challenge. So I don't know, maybe it's something like that just interested them in working on that. I don't know what it is, but
Yeah.
like they're generally not the people who are like overselling it, so much like this. But there definitely was a large contingent of people who did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like for example, as I said, I respect Max Hillbrand very much because he also came on this very show, not the live one, but and he did not oversell the challenges with Lightning. He just says, "Oh, these are what we're working on. This is what's going on." And he said, like, absolutely, I see it trending towards centralization, hub and spoke right now. But if we implement Taproot and a few other things, I think we can like steer away from that. Being very intellectually honest, it's not typically the Maxi way, but and intellectual, like, what do they call it, like consistency with now trying to be a badass cypherpunk whatever, and then when you have this government airdrop to custodial services in the country, and it's mandated by law, you accept it, he's speaking out against it and taking a lot of flack for it. So
Yeah.
big props to that. Really quick before like wrap up the lightning bit, the smart BCH thing. So I don't understand that at all, to be honest. I hear it's some sort of a way of using Ethereum's smart contracts, but using the Bitcoin Cash network. Do you have like a one sentence thing, or do you not? Do you understand that completely?
um I mean, I mean, I've only briefly looked into it, but it sounds like, an EVM type system that uses BCH, but it looks like it's using the same type of like federated peg model that like Liquid uses, right?
Mm,
So, I mean, for people who don't know, federated peg is a almost a euphemism for just a multi-sig account, right? So, like, if let's say, to give you an analogy, like when you send your money to Coinbase gives you one of their addresses that they control. It's a custodial address, and you send your money to it, and then that money is now on Coinbase's system. And I mean, theoretically, they could run like smart contract type stuff on their server. Like I could, if Coinbase had this functionality, I could attach some kind of like complex conditions on the transfer of that money from me to you, but it would still be a custodial transfer on Coinbase's system, right?
mm,
But what the federated peg is, quote unquote, is instead of putting a money in an address controlled by a single company, you're putting it in a multi-sig address, presumably controlled by multiple people. Okay, that's the only difference. It's still custodial. It's still, is almost identical to the custodial thing. It's just now the address is like a threshold signature required, where it's controlled by multiple people instead of just one. And so that's like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting that like you can do something like that and then still get, like the features of like Ethereum type contracts and VMs and stuff like that. Um, and in that sense, it's useful. I would like to see. I mean, no one ever really solved that nut of like how to transfer coin, or how to do like a genuine like side chain where there's no trust involved, right?
Mm.
So like the idea is like I can lock coins up on one chain, whether it be Bitcoin or BCH, and the act of locking it up on that chain will unlock it on the side chain, right? Like the side chain can kind of be aware of what's going on the main chain, and it can scan through the main chain to find these transactions where the coins are locked up ever. The challenge is how do you get the coins back onto the main chain again, without the main chain being aware of what's going on the side chain, right? So like
Mm.
you lock them up on the main chain. How do you unlock them on the main chain without the main chain having any knowledge of what's going on in the side chain? And I think one thing that would be really interesting would be playing around with like ZK snarks for this, because in theory you should be able to make like a circuit where um, you can prove, like create a cryptographic proof that the coins were locked up properly on the side chain, and then import that proof into the main chain and use it to unlock the coins on the main chain.
Yeah.
If something like that could work, I would be like super excited about it. I just there's just I don't know. I'm not well enough versed with snarks and everything for like how complex that would be. We also don't case you can convince the developers like, okay, we'll put it in. Like we've done that on a number of occasions with a number of things, unlike with BTC where like nothing gets added. You know,
Mm.
um, virtually nothing gets added. So
Nothing
something
hard
like
forkable.
yeah, so something like Snarks could be put in. Although you could do Snarks as a soft fork in BTC as well, and with the SegWit stuff, circuit and validating that side chain. I don't. There's so many. I've spent so much like brain power thinking about this, and I never came up with a great solution. But it's something that would really interest me a lot if you could
Hmm.
crack that nut and have a like a genuine level of trust in order to use the side chain, then it could provide smart BCH could provide additional functionality that you can't get right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, let's wrap it up on this one because this was something I was going to talk to you about, and it turns out we got a question asked here about it too, or a comment. Chris needs to be nominated as a saint for putting up with Tone Vase in his gaslighting at the BTC Maxi versus altcoins debate at Porcfest. The debate keeps proving that Maxis sound like anti-free market monopolists. All right, more of a statement really than a question, but hey, I represent that. Uh, yeah.
Well, I
Anyway.
mean, this really like I mean, Bitcoin people have gone from being like the darlings of the liberty movement, where
Mm-hmm.
like everyone wanted to talk to them. There was always a crowd around like the Bitcoin tent, and everyone wanted to talk to Bitcoiners. To now, they're like the black sheep of the Bitcoin movement. That like people just don't like them. And if you look, it's like at that debate, it was like 99% exactly like this comment. Like, I don't know how you put up with that. And like, I had a lot of people tell me, I couldn't even stand to sit through that debate and listen to those people. So I just left and walked away. So, like, and it's like in the meantime, like there was no crowds at the Bitcoin tent. We had 2,500 people at Porcfest, right? And there would be like you walk by this like Bitcoin tent to be used, but I mean, Patrick's a libertarian. Tone is, I guess, I mean, sort of. So
Tone's tone. That's a different story.
so I mean, that Surfer Jim is. So I mean, like we're kind of comrades in that sense, in that we're all libertarians, but like they've really like transformed themselves and like the Bitcoin, they've isolated themselves in the liberty community, and now people kind of like walk by and just like look over and sort of sneer and like give them the side eye as they walk by. I mean, they're really the black sheep now of the liberty movement that like a lot of people just don't like. And I think that's like really sad. It's sapped a lot of the energy from the cryptocurrency and the liberty movement. I mean, I mean, it's almost like people don't even have the energy now to figure out like what do I need to pay with. Like I can't pay with Bitcoin because it doesn't freaking work. Which one of these 8 dozen altcoins am I going to have to figure out how to use to pay with. Like people are, it's got like burned out with it. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of people are now like, I'll just pay in the fiat,
Yeah.
because it's just too much of a hassle to like figure out which altcoin people want to take. and of course nobody's like we had none of us have like united around like a single altcoin, and it's really sapped like the energy out of it and the excitement. And like you've got just like some lonely maximalist sitting there with like no one who wants to talk to him, and it's very kind of sad, you know.
Yeah, it's sad, yet it's a victory in some way. But that's the thing is this has been a war for a while, right? There's just and I have participated in the war as little as possible, right? I just
Mm.
moved on. Like I was living off of Bitcoin, didn't work. I started using Dash, I moved on. Year later, Bitcoin Cash came around. I didn't really care. Now I use Bitcoin Cash sometimes. You know, it just I use library. I use Thorchain. Like I don't care. But I have to say, maybe this is just my honest, like, maybe this is just me being overly optimistic about everything in life because otherwise, how do you, like, not kill yourself? But I kind of see it as a good thing that the energy got taken out of it because the energy. The energy will always be there somewhere once it catches fire again. It's kind of like the Ron Paul movement, right? It was just so much energy and then kind of like went away. It causes
And
you.
then now it's the Dave Smith movement, apparently.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. You get something good, a few different things, but like, do you really think that, for example, like this is my personal opinion, just take Bitcoin Cash, not to speak of the thousands of other projects out there that are doing amazing things, but just go to Bitcoin Cash for a second. Do you think Bitcoin Cash would be as good, or there would be as much development on it today if it was just a continuation of Bitcoin that had all this momentum? I don't think so. I think there's that competitive pressure of we're just gonna die off if we don't make shit happen. If we don't
Mm.
make the good case why this is the best technology out there, where it's not just, well, it was the first and we're riding the momentum and everyone loves Bitcoin kind of thing, and it drives Peter Schiff
Mhm.
nuts. Like it's just something
Yeah.
about not being able to tap into that like now it's because I remember before at Porcfest, like I would always pay in crypto. And this time, of course, I also paid in crypto, but there were a couple of places that were just not interested in taking it. In previous times, they got kind of easily bullied into taking it. They're like, "Oh, I'm not set up yet," but like now they've heard enough back and forth, they're just like, "Nah." And so,
Mhm.
sad as that is, it's also exciting because it's like, "Oh, you mean I have to actually like earn your business?" Challenge, which might be why people get excited about the Lightning Network again. Full circle. It's like, "Oh, you mean like we take this like garbage main chain that it sucks."
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is like, I mean, certainly from the technical people perspective, like work. Um, I don't know. I mean, I find it a little bit hard. I mean, even working, I work on BCH.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even that is, it's like, I don't know. It's at some point, I just don't know how to make like a value proposition that like you should use BCH. I mean, rather than any number of other ones that are doing very similar things. Um, I mean, it was one time. The value proposition was obviously the strongest during the block size debate, and now like there's a lot of coins that kind of can do a lot of similar stuff to BCH, and so it makes it a lot harder. Like if you're not like Bitcoin with that network effect sitting at the top, um it really is in like the strongest position, I think, just because they're like at the top of the position, and which really kind of makes you wonder. I mean, obviously we don't have any counterfactual here, but like what would the world look like if we had won the block size debate and the maxis had lost it, right? Like,
Yeah.
but I mean, I would have to think that there would be still a lot more energy behind Bitcoin if it still worked like it worked in 2014, 2015.
Yeah, probably. The thing is, I don't know. It's hard to really guess, but I tend to find it. Was it the old Jeff Goldblum saying of like life will find a way? I kind of feel a lot sooner. We would hit that roadblock a lot quicker than and it took long enough that enough governments were like, yeah, it's not a threat, and then it starts getting adopted. Too many people in government started to own some, whatever.
That's a good point.
It
Yeah.
could have been like it just went full steam ahead and hit it. It could have been honestly, we hit some interesting scaling problems. Not necessarily, oh, you cannot send more transactions, but like maybe enough people would be using it. Centralization problem would have had that with like regular nodes, for example, and a few big ones would have gotten shut down by the government, and then there'd be other problems. DeFi. People would never have gotten around to DeFi because they're too busy. Like, we already had DeFi, it's Bitcoin, and like sending it all over the place. They never would have created more censorship resistant exchanges. It could have been all these sorts of things. And so I don't know. The world shit, like the counterbalancing effects of the way world shakes out are pretty incredible, to where a species goes extinct and so we lost the species. Well, now there's a void in the ecosystem, and something else. They didn't go out of business, by the way, in case someone's freaking out. But like, if In-N-Out goes out of business, like there's a void in the market for, let's say, Shake Shack to take over, something else to like move in there, or something entirely new. And so that's kind of where I'm leaving this at. It shook out the way it shook out. Maybe we would have had some intense micropayment problems that are neatly solved by a Lightning network of sorts on an actual scalable network, that it wouldn't have existed if people weren't trying to make Lightning work to actually send regular money. But it turns out that all it was purpose built for was like micropayments. So
yeah, like
you never know.
If you look at my that data that I was just talking about, like the probabilities, the smaller the payment, the higher the probability it's going to route, right? So like it was $1 would route 96% of the time, but like 1 penny would route almost 100, right? So like if you wanted to do like micropayments on the Lightning network, that would work great for that, right? It would route most of the time. But when you start getting up into like everyday payment dollar amounts, that's when you have problems.
Well, I got to wrap this thing up. Anywhere you want to point people other than your Twitter?
Like maximalist and non-maximalist. So, and someone like recommended me. I would be down for doing it if someone else wanted to kind of put my name out there. But
yeah,
I don't know.
If it's like a panel type thing, like the go ahead to go into battle, because otherwise they'd say some nonsense and I'd be like, I don't believe that, but like, I don't 110% understand.
Before going on, but
yeah, have like one headphone be like what's going on, the other one is like The Wire.
Oh yeah,
be funny.
Cheating.
Yes, Great Wolf. It is too late to submit to the super chat to be answered in this podcast. If it's something that can be reasonably Dash related, it could be in the next one. Or if it's something that's not, still submit it and I'll answer it, or get Chris to answer it. Hopefully, maybe you have to throw him some of the money, just on Twitter or whatever else. So yeah, I'll still get it to you if you want to still do. I'm never going to say no to free money, right? Or earned money in this case. All right, guys, this has been great. Dash podcast up next, and yeah, I'll see you guys in. There's a possibility I'll travel next week, which means I will have to do the rundown a day early. But it's been great having you, Chris. Always a lot of great insight on this sort of stuff. Always a lot of great rambles that really